Okay, let's start with the fun stuff. Let's talk about baby Milana. So, the way that my husband and I found out, let's rewind back to July when she was conceived. We had no idea. I had just started a pretty rigorous workout program. I was going to the gym like 6 days a week, lifting really heavy. So, when my period was thrown off, I wasn't surprised. I thought, oh, yeah, of course, like this happens every time I start working out a lot. So I was in denial for a while. At the same time, though, not to be too graphic, because I know we have some men listen to the show as well, but my breasts began to be very ouchy and they were just not fitting in any of my clothes. And, women know that's one of the first signs of getting pregnant. But for me, I've never done this before. I've never been pregnant before. So it wasn't a super red flag, but my husband kind of had an idea. And so he bought the first pregnancy test and it actually came out negative. So life goes on. I'm still not having my period. I was, over a month late, but it was the second time this year that that happened of me being over a month late. So I still wasn't freaking out. So I take this second round of pregnancy tests per my husband's request, and this one came out positive. I can still remember the way my husband and I just like looked at each other in total astonishment, like two little kids in a candy store who just like saw their favorite ice cream on display or something. Um, I was totally in shock. I didn't believe it. So we drove straight to CVS and bought the fancy pregnancy tests that say blatantly pregnant or not pregnant. And we went back to the house and took numerous of them, and all of them said I was pregnant. And so for me, for those of you who know me, I don't really have experience with babies. I never nannied, I never did any of that. Whereas my husband, he is phenomenal with babies. Like every time there's a baby around or a small child, like I've basically lost my husband. He's gone, he's playing, like this is his jam. So for me, I think I was more in shock and disbelief and like, oh my gosh. Whereas my husband, he was just excited right away. Given as well, it's my body that's going to be changing and going through all these things. So it makes sense that it would take a little bit longer for me to process than for him to process. But I'm just so glad that he was so excited and supportive because this definitely helped me in the process. I mean, it's not like we were doing anything. I guess the way my aunt would describe this is you weren't doing anything to prevent it from happening, which is true. It's like we weren't trying, but we weren't trying for it not to happen, if that makes sense. We've been married for 2 years, and we knew it could happen anytime, but we definitely thought we had another 2 to 5 years before it happened. However, if things happened according to our plan, it would just not be as good as, I know it is according to God's plan. So at the end of the day, even though it wasn't according to our timeline or what we thought was going to happen, we trust God so much and we're so excited. And we just know that all life is a blessing from God. And we trust that He's going to provide and guide us and help us be parents for this little girl. So we're so excited. So then a couple of you asked, how do you pronounce her name and where'd you get the inspiration for it? So her name is going to be Milana Renee Nikolenko, and she's going to go by Mila. But the way we essentially came to the name Milana was for 2 years. I'll just say I have a very loving and supportive Ukrainian in-law family who have been ready for baby since day one. Actually, that's an incredibly important part of the birth story or the pregnancy story that I almost forgot to tell you guys about. So my father-in-law has been, encouraging us to have a baby and bring a grandbaby into this world basically day one since we got married. And my husband and I are very I'm not going to say workaholic, but we do have a lot of career visions and goals. So we're like, you know what, like, Pop, thank you, but we're going to keep working on our goals. So, and, get more financially stable and travel a little bit and all these things before we get pregnant. But this has been a dream of my father-in-law, like I said, since day one. So 2 weeks before we find out that I'm pregnant, two very important things happen back to back. And this is just how cool God is as well. The first thing is I had started going to the Orthodox church with my husband. We were now going to the Orthodox church every other week and the non-denominational church that we were going to every other week. And a part of Christian orthodoxy is having these icons, these images of Jesus, of Mary, of your patron saint around the house. And this is something my husband, he was asking, can we have a prayer corner somewhere that we could pray together in our house and have these saints. So I told my father-in-law that we were creating a prayer corner. And he was like, okay, well, you don't need to go out and buy a bunch of icons. I have a bunch of extra ones here. So I come over to his house and he gave me, a couple from Russia, Ukraine, these historic icons, pictures of Jesus and Mary. And with the one he gave me of Mary, it almost looked like she was holding a seed. And I didn't really understand it, but I was like, okay, thank you. And, went about my business. And then later on, he tells me, he's like, oh, yes, this is the icon that women pray to when they want to get pregnant. And so then I understood, because it was old style art, it was a little hard to understand what exactly I was looking at here. But then I understood, oh, it's Mary, and this is showing Jesus in her womb. So my father-in-law was telling me, this is, the icon women will pray to when they want to get pregnant. And I was like, oh, great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So anyways, I bring that icon home, go about my life. And another thing I don't ever really talk about much, I don't really do solo podcasts often, so I don't just have a chance to tell you guys these things. But these are the kinds of things that I would journal about so I don't forget, when God is speaking to me or something really cool happens. And that same week, I had this dream with my grandma. So my grandma was basically like my mother. My grandma and grandpa raised me, and they passed away. My grandpa passed away when I was around a senior in high school, and my grandma passed away when I was a freshman in college. And for those of you who have seen my testimony video, you know the way I kind of spiraled after they passed. But I have, they show up in my dreams all the time. Like 1 out of 3 nights, I dream that I'm, somewhere with my grandparents. But this dream was different, you guys. So in this dream, I end up having a surprise baby. This baby just kind of came out of nowhere. And it's not even like I was pregnant in the dream. It's just like next thing I knew, I had this baby in my arms, and this baby was crying and screaming and flailing around. And my grandma was there, and I remember her looking at me and telling me, like, it's okay. This is normal. Everything's going to be okay. You're fine. Just comforting me, consoling me. So I hold this baby, and I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, I don't even have a blanket to wrap this baby. I don't even have a stroller. Like, what am I going to do? And I want to go for a walk. So next thing I know, I'm walking down the sidewalk with this baby, and I look up, and my husband is leaving for work. And I'm like, oh my gosh, here I am with this baby. What am I going to do? And I wake up the next morning, and I'm like, that was a weird dream. But I didn't think anything of it until once again, 2 weeks later, and we get the confirmation that we're pregnant. So I looked at this later, and, I've had some episodes about, are ghosts demons? Can the dead communicate with you? All these things. I don't 100% know. Maybe it was God communicating to me in my dreams, or maybe it really was my grandma consoling me in my dream or letting me know that she knew that, we were pregnant and that everything was going to be okay and that she was there. I don't 100% know. I don't know 100% what's true or not, but I won't forget that dream. That's a huge part of the pregnancy story, and just the way that I was being told supernaturally that I was pregnant before it even happened, and the way it all tied together with the icon of Mother Mary. And then 2 weeks later, we find out we're pregnant. So I was going to tell you guys, how we got to the name. So since my in-laws are so involved with our life and, our pregnancy and all of that, from the beginning, we'd been going back and forth on potential baby names. So when we first got pregnant, if it's a boy, he's going to be this. If it's a girl, she's going to be this. And there's a lot of names in English and in American culture that just make no sense to Ukrainian parents. They're like, that's weird. I can't say that. And then vice versa. A lot of very popular Ukrainian or Russian names that for me, I'm like, "No way, like, we're never gonna name our baby that," and so finding some names that we agreed on was it really did take, like, a 2-year process. So we had narrowed it down. If it was a boy, he was gonna be Vincenzo, and he was gonna go by Vinny, and if it was a girl, she was gonna be Milana, and she was gonna go by Mila, and these were names that we all agreed on. I believe that name meanings are really important and that a lot of times we kinda live up to the characteristics that, our names describe, and so what Milana means is favored, beloved, sweetheart, darling, and this was kinda consistent because there's lots of different origins from which the name Milana or different versions, Milan, Mila, come from, and these were the consistent, attributes. And then the middle name is Renee, which is actually mine, my mom's, and my aunt's middle name, so that's been passed down, and what this name means is actually born again. So I just think that, it's just such a beautiful name, and I could already imagine the kinda girl that she's gonna be with a name like Milana Renee.